G'day, Pastor Blake here. Thanks so much for watching this message today. I pray that this sermon and resource would help grow you in your relationship with Jesus, also in conjunction with a local church. If you have any questions about our church, you can head to our website, devonportcoc.com.au. Again, thanks for watching this message today, and I do hope that it blesses you in your love and devotion towards Jesus Christ.
So you are driving a bus, you go east 12 miles and turn south and go 2 miles and take on 9 passengers, and then you turn west and go 3 miles and then you let off 4 passengers. How old is the bus driver? 32. Listening is important, right? My first sentence is, you are the bus driver. Yeah. And sometimes we latch on to certain information that we think is important in a question and then somehow miss the most important part. But anyway, today I'm going to talk about, this is sort of relevant to the message. Apologise to those online for my coughing. It is what it is. So I've got this cup of hot water here. All right. I really appreciate that you would pray for me before Sundays. If I ask you a question, how many of you pray for me before I preach? I won't get you to raise your hand. But I really need your prayers on weekends. Anyway, I haven't started yet. We're in week 2 of a series that we've been calling Things I Want My Kids to Remember Forever. Things I want my kids to remember forever. And 2 weeks ago, I kicked off the series with the first lesson that I want my kids to remember forever, that life is not fair. Life is not fair. I want my kids to remember that there will be many times in life when they will be treated unfairly, looked over, or left out, and that's part of life. This series is all about building resilience in people's lives. I don't know about you, but I want my kids and grandkids to be, I'm prophesying there, grandkids. I'm hoping for a football team. We want them to be resilient and grow up to be resilient teenagers who grow up into resilient young adults who grow up into resilient adults. But that sometimes in life, unjust things happen to us. But it's how we react to them that is the most important thing in the end. Life sometimes may be unfair, I talked about. That life sometimes may be unfair, but God is always faithful. So the next principle that I want my kids to remember forever is this. Life is like a bus. Life is like a bus. Do you realise that your life is like a bus? Well, I'm here to tell you that your life is like a bus. Life is a journey. Life is a journey, and everyone is travelling along their path. Your life is like driving a bus in many ways. And the reason it's so important to know this is because all of us in this room fear losing people out of our lives. We have a fear of losing people from our lives. When a friend stops contacting you, when a friend stops calling you, your partner breaks up with you, or a team member quits and moves somewhere else, or a family leaves the church. We all lose people from our lives. And sometimes we'll know why people leave us. But most of the time, we'll never know. Most of the time, we'll never know. But everyone here fears losing people, be they friends, partners, families, or followers on Instagram. You know, people are frightened of losing people. And the reason that people are, like you and I, are frightened of losing people from our lives is because they see the people in their lives as a reflection of who you are. We see people in our lives as a reflection of who they are. If you're a good person, if you're a kind person, a loving, likable, inspiring, motivating person and fun, people should want to stick around you. People should want to be around you. But if they leave or if they move on, it's easy to believe that that's a reflection of you. I want to suggest to you this morning something about life. That people are in our lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Sometimes there are specific reasons why people come into your lives, and you think that they just come straight from heaven. They come into your life for a reason, a specific purpose. It's like God has brought them to you for a specific purpose in your life. Other people come into your life for a season. Our lives have many seasons to them. I'm sure you've worked this out by now. Many seasons to them. And people come into our lives for a season. Have you noticed that? It may be 5 years, it may be 10 years, it may be 15 years, it may be 20 years, but it's a season, which means that not only do seasons start, but it also means that seasons end, right? Seasons end also. Very few people, listen to this, very few people will travel with you for a lifetime. Apart from your spouse, your family, and maybe for some people, maybe the rare friend. But very few people will travel in your bus for a lifetime. So don't try and hold on to people who are never destined to stay. Like the story of Paul and Barnabas for me is indicative of seasons and the fact that sometimes people get off your bus and head in a different direction. Let me read to you from Acts chapter 15, 36 to 41. After some days, Paul said to Barnabas, "Let us return and visit the brethren in every city in which we proclaimed the word of the Lord, and see how they are." Barnabas wanted to take John, called Mark, along with them also. But Paul kept insisting that they should not take him along, who had deserted them in Pamphylia and had not gone with them to the work. And there occurred such a sharp disagreement that they separated from one another, and Barnabas took Mark with him and sailed away to Cyprus. But Paul chose Silas and left, being committed by the brethren to the grace of the Lord, and he was travelling through Syria and Cilicia, strengthening the churches. Barnabas wanted to take John Mark with them on their missionary journey, but Paul felt like it wasn't a good idea, right? And while the Bible doesn't tell us actually why Barnabas wanted to take John, Mark's so bad, why he wanted to take John Mark so badly, we do know why Paul didn't feel like it was the best thing. Because he had deserted them on previous missionary journeys. Undoubtedly, Barnabas, he was the type of guy, Barnabas is a high mercy gift. Let me just tell you this. Barnabas is high mercy gift, Paul's not. Just a little insight there. Barnabas wanted to forgive John Mark and felt that his presence on the trip would be a blessing, but also, you need to know, they're also cousins. So who's right, Paul or Barnabas? Well, the truth is that there doesn't always have to be a right reason or a right answer. Both men had valid reasons for their choice. Why there was this disagreement, they ended up parting ways. In one way, they were both right in their arguments and both right in their concerns. So they ultimately agreed in the end, we're going to agree to disagree. And Paul and Barnabas went their separate ways because that was the best thing for them both to do in this particular situation. Paul and Barnabas parted ways, but they still shared a common goal, and to spread the good news of Jesus Christ across the world. And in fact, because they split, they actually reached more people and more cities because they split their resources, and there was more missionary journeys and more people reached. Do you know, I think it's easy to feel hurt and angered, frustrated or devastated when people leave your bus in life. But I think it's selfish and unloving to personalise your passengers' decisions. Everyone that you meet in life is journeying. Everyone that we meet in life is journeying, and no one knows where they're going. And to make it more complicated, they have passengers of their own on their own bus to deal with. Remember, if your life is like a bus, then very few people will ride the bus the whole way to your destination and purpose. Very few people in life will stay with you until the bus of your life terminates its journey. The majority will get off somewhere en route. As a bus driver, your job, you think about a bus driver, he's not concerned when someone gets off at a bus stop. You say as a bus driver, your job is to take your vehicle to its final destination. You're not supposed to cry or break down whenever somebody gets off because you didn't want them to. You can't plead with passengers to stay with you. Could you stay with me until the very end of my bus journey? Could you stay with me right to the end? No, the whole way to its destination. No, you don't do that. You can't plead. You don't see bus drivers pleading with passengers. Could you stay with me until the bus terminates, please? You don't see that at all, do you? Would you stay with me for a few more stops? No, listen to me. People need to get off when people need to get off. Last Sunday we announced, if you missed this, that our beloved Yowie is in the final stages of securing a ministry opportunity with Alice Springs Baptist Church, associate pastor. And Yowie and Emma and the children have travelled on this bus of Devonport Church of Christ for many, many years. Yowie's been a team member for over 7.5 years. He is deeply loved, valued, had a tremendous season here. And it's been an absolute privilege to see him grow and develop. And as I said last week, we're going to celebrate and his growth and development here in his home church, and we'll continue now to be cheerleaders from afar. I'm sad to see Yowie, Emma and the kids go, like many of you are. But here's my point. Boy, I'm glad they're on the bus. Aren't you too? Your role in life is to help the ones you love get to where they need to be in life. And I know I've done that with Yowie over the last 7.5 years. That's why we have to make stops. That's why we have to make stops and take breaks and build relationships with people so they know that it's okay that you can't stay on the bus forever. You not only can apply this principle to your own life's journey, but also to the church. Do you know the church is like a bus? People get off all the time. People are getting off church buses all the time in Devonport. People get off and people get on. If I had $1 for how many people get off and get on, I'd retire. And it's just a part of life. It just happens all the time. Don't stop just because people you didn't want to hop off. You are the most loyal and longest travelling passenger, and you have so much further to go. I know this might sound a little bit philosophical, but let me tell you, it helps me to deal with the comings and goings of people in my life. And I want my kids to be able to deal with the comings and goings of people in their lives so it doesn't eat their lunch. Is this making sense to you today? People come into your lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. That's life. Here's another thing. Sometimes people will not get on your bus until some people get off. yes. There are some people in our church who need to hear this today. There are some people in your life who can stay in your heart, but they can't stay physically in your life. Trust me, I meet with them during the week. And there's some people who, they have some people in their lives who can't stay in their lives anymore. It may be a toxic friend, partner, church member, work colleague, could even be a relative. But until they get off your bus, others who want to get on your bus will not. In fact, there are times in our lives, there are seasons in our lives relationally where for the good to start, the bad must end. I wish I could here's my number one counselling tip. For the good to start, the bad must end. Someone paid me $1,000. Counsellors get paid $1,000 to tell that to people. For the good to start, the bad must end. Hello? In some people's lives, in our congregation, for the good to start, the bad must end. You want the good to start, but the bad has to end. That's my counselling advice. Some people like it, some people don't. But it's truth. For the good to start, the bad must, what? It's got to end. Because you can't get to where you need to go, where God wants you to be, with some people still part of your life. People say, that's not very kind. That's not very Christian. Allow me to biblically illustrate this from Genesis chapter 30 and 31, just in case you thought, was there any biblical content to this today? Well, let me illustrate it from Genesis chapter 30, 31. The story of Jacob and his uncle Laban. I mean, Jacob's family of origin reads like an episode of The Bold and the Beautiful. When we did our family trees, our geneagrams in the course, you know, it was interesting. Some people's was like The Bold and the Beautiful. I think all of us probably have a little bit of The Bold and the Beautiful in our family of origins maybe, but I mean, he was shocking. Bad parents, bad marriages, bad relationships, and a toxic father-in-law. Jacob shows up and he sees this girl, Rachel, and he falls in love. He sees Rachel, he says, oh, that's my girl. She's for me. That's what happens. And he wants to marry her. I want to marry Rachel. But Laban says, you've got to work for me for 7 years. Labour. It's part of the bride price. 7 years, please. So, for 7 years he works for Laban. And they have the wedding. So after 7 years they have the wedding. And they go into a tent, I suppose, to consummate the marriage. And I don't know about this, if they had too many drinks at the wedding feast. But after the wedding, but for some reason, Jacob wakes up not next to Rachel, but her older sister. How did that happen? Problem, now he's married to a girl he doesn't love. You know what happened, don't you? The dad and the daughters tricked him and set him up with this horrible deception. And Laban says, well, mate, if you still want to marry Rachel, that's fine, but I need another 7 years from you. Another 7 years of hard labour for the bride price. 14 years of hard labour, not owning anything, being used and abused by his father-in-law. And at this point, he's now been under, at this point what I'm about to get to, he's been under the auspices of his demonic father-in-law for 20 years. 20 years of his life he's burnt. 20 years of his life in this family. For 20 years he's put up with this nonsense. And now he has 20 years down the road. And now he has 11 sons and one daughter to 4 different women. Massively dysfunctional. Complicated family dynamics. I'll tell you why. Because life is together. Business is together. He's living on his father-in-law's property. But the guy is toxic. Jacob has lost 20 years of his life, church, and to this man, and up until this point in the story, nobody is wise. Nobody is wise. Do you know the Bible teaches this truth, that there are 3 types of people in the world in 2022? People who cough. There are 3 types of people in churches today: wise people, foolish people, and evil people. Let me tell you the 3 types of people that you will meet in your life: wise people, foolish people, and evil people. It's a fact. Laban is evil. The guy is evil. I'll show you why. He abuses his own daughters. I don't mean sexually or anything like that. He abuses his own daughters psychologically for his own gain. And finally, Jacob starts to get a little bit wise. He starts to push back a little bit. Jacob is coming to the realization, I have to get off Laban's bus. I have to get off Laban's... For what is it? For the good to start, the what? The bad must end. You may say, man, I wish my life could get into a better season. Wish my marriage could get into a better season. I wish my relationship with Jesus could get into a better season. Yeah, listen, for good to start, the bad must end. So with that background and that context, let me now read to you from Genesis chapter 30, verses 25 through 43. It's a bit of text, but hang in there with me because I need to read it all. But you've got that context now, let me read this. After Rachel gave birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, send me on my way. He's saying, Laban, I want off the bus so I can go back to my own homeland. Give me my wives and children for whom I have served you, and I will be on my way. You know how much I've done for you. But Laban said to him, just watch how manipulating he is. If I have found favor in your eyes, please stay. I have learned by divination. What's he mean by that? I spoke to my demon. I have learned through divination, demons and the occult, that the Lord has blessed me because of you. Sometimes people get blessed in life, even non-Christians, because they hang around Christians. There is something that happens. There is a transference. Here, Laban is evil, but he is blessed because he's got a righteous man in the household. I've learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. He added, name your wages and I'll pay them. Jacob said to him, but you know how I've worked for you 20 years and how your livestock has fared under my care. The little you had before I came, but the little you had before I came has increased greatly. And the Lord has blessed me. The Lord has blessed you wherever I have been. But now, here it is. But now, when may I do something for my own household? You see it? You see it? When will I do something for my own life? When will I do something for my own household? What's he saying? When am I going to get off this bus crash and get on my own bus? Well, what shall I give you? He asked. Don't give me anything, Jacob replied. Let me tell you, never take anything from a toxic person. Never take anything from a toxic person where you owe them, where you are indebted to them. Does that make sense? Don't do it. Jacob saw that. And Jacob says, give me nothing. I want nothing from you, Laban. But if you will do this one thing for me, I will go out on tending your flocks and watching over them. Let me go through all your flocks today and remove from them every speckled or spotted sheep, every dark-coloured lamb, and every spotted or speckled goat. they will be my wages. And my honesty will testify for me in the future. Whenever you check on the wages you've paid me, any goat in my possession that is not speckled or spotted, or any lamb that is not dark-coloured, will be considered stolen. Agreed, said Laban. Let it be as you have said. But Laban is so duplicitous. That same day, he removed all the male goats that were streaked or spotted, and all the speckled or spotted female goats, all that had white on them, and all the dark-coloured lambs, and he placed them in the care of his sons. Then he put a 3-day journey between himself and Jacob. And while Jacob continued to tend to the rest of Laban's flocks, Jacob, however, took fresh cut branches from poplar, almond, and plane trees and made white stripes on them by peeling the bark and exposing the white inner wood of the branches. Then he placed the peeled branches in all the watering troughs so that they would be directly in front of the flocks when they came to drink. And when the flocks were in heat and came to drink, they made it in front of the branches. And they bore young that were streaked or speckled or spotted. Jacob set apart the young of the flock by themselves, but made the rest face the streaked and double-coloured animals that belonged to Laban. Thus he made separate flocks for himself, and he did not put them in Laban's animals. Whenever the stronger females were in heat, Jacob would place the branches in the troughs in front of the animals so they would mate near the branches. But if the animals were weak, he would not place them there. So the weak animals went to Laban and the strong ones to Jacob. In this way, the man Jacob grew exceedingly prosperous and came to own large flocks, female and male servants, and camels and donkeys. What a weird story. You've heard the story before, right? Very smart, but he knew God was on his side. But let me explain it this way. You need to think of this as a business. He's a smart business operator. Think of this as a business. Jacob says, I'm going to take the most underperforming parts of the business, and Laban, you can take the most profitable parts of the business. That's what he said, didn't he? That's what he's saying. I'll take the most underperforming parts of the business. I mean, who does that? And Laban, you can have the most profitable part of the business. But Laban is so dishonest and he's so evil in his interactions with his son-in-law and his daughters and grandchildren. I mean, how can this be? But Jacob places his whole trust in the Lord. Faith and trust in the Lord. And what happens? God blesses him abundantly. Why that story? I believe that if you want to survive the comings and goings of people in your life, you have to get, as I said, a little philosophical about this. It helps me. Man, if I took it personally every time someone defriended me on Facebook or left the church, I'd take it personally. But I don't. I get philosophical about it. Why? Because it's part of life. You know, some people will not get on your bus until some people get off it. And you need to know that for some people, in some people's lives, we need to allow people to get off. Sometimes you need to kick people off the bus, like I saw many times as a young high schooler on our bus route. But what is happening here is that Jacob said to Laban, enough is enough. I'm off this crazy bus ride, Laban, and so are your daughters and so are your granddaughters. We're out of here. Sometimes allow people to get off your bus because there are other people waiting to get on down the next 2 stops. God has placed a calling over my life. And God has placed a calling over your life. It's like the destination on the front of the bus. This is where it's headed. This is where I'm going. Keep driving. Keep moving forward because God has an amazing destination in store for you. There are some people in our church, maybe you know some people like that, that some people could stay in their hearts but can't stay in their lives. Am I making sense here? They can stay in their hearts, they can't stay in their lives. But never allow somebody, whether it's a relative, a friend, a boss, a supervisor, never let anybody drive your bus in a direction that they want for you. It's not right. Some people in our church need to hear this. Love yourself enough not to be mistreated. Here's a principle I live by. You can take it or leave it, but I am not responsible for other people's reactions to my boundaries. Hello? I am not responsible for other people's reactions to my boundaries. And you are not responsible for other people's reactions to your boundaries in life as well. I hope that I learnt this lesson a long time ago. Life is like a bus. And I want my kids to remember forever that life is like driving a bus so that they can survive the comings and goings and the Facebook defriendings and the Instagram defriendings and people coming in their lives and leaving their lives so it doesn't eat their lunch. Philippians chapter 3, 13 to 14 says, brothers and sisters, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it, but one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on towards the goal to win the prize to which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. Amen?